It is time once again, guys, as we actually have a different type of segment today, as we're going to be talking about Jesmon and does it BT 2.5 support, or technically BT 20 support, have what it takes to bring this deck back from its disappearance. But before I get into it, this is simply talking about fighting back, as we're going to see if Jesmon has what it takes to return to the metagame, as I do think this is a deck that as of recent has been hyped up pretty well. It does have some results from the BT20 format over in Japan, but as we receive it in 2.5, we're going to be seeing a big explosion, and will it be able to come back? But before, we also have one thing I'd like to ask of you, and you guys know what it is. That's to accelerate the sub count, help us keep on growing as we are reaching higher and higher, and I'd love for you to be along the ride as we climb ever so higher with the ad army. But before that, let's just jump straight into the video, because this is what you're here for. Let's jump into it right now, as we are talking about first the BT20 support. As we're going to be looking at all the cards from BT20, I do think it's interesting to note that Jesmon has actually received a big bump than it had before. Now, most of the time people see Jesmon, this is something where, I don't know, some people hate the deck. I think it's mostly because during BT6, this deck was kind of goated for what it was. But additionally, I think one thing that makes this deck interesting is that it's a fan favorite. It's a Royal Knight. He's just really cool looking. It has a cool story associated with it, with Genkumon. But the point is, the support here really does push the deck into a new realm. But I also think that when later on we talk about in the video, we have a lot to talk about in terms of the variations of the deck that can exist now, thanks to the new support. But we're jumping into it first, as we have the brand new BT20 Huckmon here, which at the start of your main phase, by trashing one card with Huckmon or Sistermon in its name, or the Royal Knight trait in your hand, you draw one card and gain one memory. And for your turn for its inheritable, all your Digimon get 1000 DP. Just remember, that's Huckmon, like Huckleberry, stuff like that. I hope you guys get the reference. But moving into the brand new BT20 Bauhuckmon, this one for its main effect has a very interesting effect, which we'll talk about later, where once per turn, you may play one Digimon card with Sistermon or Genkumon in its name from your hand with the play cost reduced by 2. Extremely good, and we'll explain later on why. For its inheritable, your turn, all of your Digimon get 1000 DP. Very different, but unique. As we talk about the brand new Savior, Huckmon, this is where the deck really starts to ramp up, and you'll see in a second why. During its on-play, when Digivolving, you get to delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 5000 DP or less. At the end of your turn, by suspending one of your other Digimon, this Digimon may Digivolve into a Digimon card with Jesmon in its name in the hand without paying the cost. Then for its inheritable, during your turn, this Digimon with the Royal Knight trait gains Alliance. Very cool. Now we'll talk about the BT20 Jesmon. This one is brand new, and interestingly enough has an effect we have not seen on the Jesmon line, where on play and when Digivolving, you may play one Atho, Rene, and Poor Token. That Digimon is a white Digimon with 6000 DP. It carries Reboot, Blocker, and Decoy, and it actually carries the colors of red and black. Then during your turn, once per turn, when any of your other Digimon are played, by deleting one of your opponent's Digimon with 8000 DP or less, then you get to attack. One of your Digimon may attack. Sorry if that sounded a little bit weird, but reading it was a bit strange. But yeah, basically you delete, and then one of your Digimon can attack. Or may attack, sorry. So it's not mandatory. Moving into the brand new Jesmon'S, we have a very interesting step up, as this card is actually just a rare, so I'm just pointing it out here. It's very affordable, which is very cool. But starting off, it can Digivolve on top of Jesmon for a cost of 1. Its innate skill is Alliance, and then when Digivolving, if Jesmon or X antibody is in this Digimon's Digievolution cards, for the turn, one of your Digimon isn't affected by your opponent's effects, then one of your Digimon may attack. During your turn, all of your Digimon with Sistermon in their names or the Royal Knight trait gain piercing, and can also attack your opponent's unsuspended Digimon. For its inheritable, during your turn, while this Digimon is Jesmon GX, all of your Digimon gain piercing and can also attack your opponent's unsuspended Digimon. Very good. Talking about the brand new BT20 Jesmon GX. This one is a super rare, very cool, and it can DNA Digivolve with a level 6 with Jesmon in its name, plus a level 6 with Genkumon in its name for a cost of 0. It can also Blast Digivolve as a counter effect, where it can Digivolve on top of any, obviously red-black, but more importantly than that, it's on playing when digivolving and when attacking effect is once per turn by placing one Royal Knight trait card from your hand or trash as this Digimon's bottom Digi-Evolution card. Delete one of your opponent's Digimon with as much or less DP as this Digimon. For its when attacking once per turn, this Digimon unsuspends. Then for every 2 Royal Knight trait cards in this Digimon's Digi-Evolution cards, you get to trash your opponent's top security card. Very cool. And it carries the overflow of -5 as something expected of a level 7. Now, let's look at what we've got here because there's a lot to unpack. I think the craziest thing about this specifically is how good the Jesmon'S support has been consistently after Jesmon'S has been released. Now, if you're wondering what I mean by that, it's that every time Jesmon'S has received some support in terms of a major wave, the deck finds a way to somewhat climb back to the metagame. I do think during BT13, its support was a bit slower, so it was unable to kind of like step back into the metagame fully, but we did see people pilot the deck extremely well during the BT13 format and formats after, as the deck was still able to somewhat put up a threat. However, with the re-inclusion of the BT6 Savior Huckmon, I do think that Jesmon'S does have an ability to step back into the metagame, but I do think it's been morally pushed down by people switching off to other decks and looking for other alternatives. However, with the BT20 support, many avenues have now opened up for the deck. Now, if you're wondering how this is possible, this is what you have to look at what the deck now can function with. Starting off, when we look at the BT20 support by itself, the amazing thing here is that the deck has completely kind of turned around in terms of being able to add new elements to it, but it also offers the older versions of the deck more pieces to take advantage of so that they become even more consistent and more powerful. So with Huckmon, the advantage you have now is that one thing that was always a problem, I think, of the deck going forward after its last wave of support was that although it had a good amount of searching power, it still kind of felt off that you needed an option to really do something from Master to Disciple, or you really needed your generic options to do more searching if you did not have the BT6 Huckmon. The advantage you now have with the brand new BT20 Huckmon is that you can turn your dead Sistermons in your hand or pieces of the Huckmon line that you do not need as cards and memory, which can allow you to step up. I also do like the fact that this does synergize really well with the BT13 support, because now you have more memory to work with when you have your kind of playing Sistermons and Digivolving back effect to reduce your play Digi-Evolution costs into like Bao Huck as well, or from Savior Huck into Jesmon'S as well from the BT13 support. But ultimately, when we look at the brand new Bao Huckmon, a very cool facet is that it's really good for the new support. It's okay for the past support, but it's still very strong, where if you want to play the past support, you're really only going to be probably reducing your play cost of your Sistermons. By playing them down for a reduced cost of 2 is still very strong. Because if you play a Blanc for 1, it's still a lot better than hard playing it for 3. And then if you play a Seal for 2, you're basically playing it for roughly 1 cost because it'll gain a memory if it's that Seal. But the point is, you're also able to use something like the the BT10 Sistermon Seal, who can allow you to Digivolve, and you basically play her for 2 cost when you hard play her from here, so you can get into Savior. Point is, it's a very good card, and there's a lot of options you can do. But additionally, the DP inheritable effects of both the Huckmon and Bao Huckmon are important because it sets up for the Alliance keyword now added to Jesmon'S, where when we look at Savior Huckmon, I think the deck really does catapult to where you need to do, because there's a lot of combos involved with this deck now, which is very cool. So when you pull them off, it's like really good. But the factor here is that when you look at Savior Huckmon here, it being able to delete is always really good, because I do think that in trading for, maybe the unsuspension of BT6, or even the ability to like play stuff out or have more DP, or attack unsuspended Digimon, you do have this ability to delete, so it's still useful. But then its end of turn effect really does pair well with Bao Huck, where whatever you played off of the Bao Huckmon, if you can get into Savior Huckmon, can then suspend that card in order to allow it to Digivolve into something else. And in the case of having the inheritable of Alliance, when you Digivolve into pretty much specifically the BT20 Jesmon'S, this one now plays its token down, which if you don't know, this is very cool interaction, because when you play down the token, you are going to then proceed to attack at the end of the effect, which now sets up the Alliance play. And because of the inheritables of the BT20 support, that token will have at least 2k more DP. You'll then go for the alliance check. You'll perform, obviously the check itself. But the point is you'll perform 2 checks, really big attack power, and it's just very solid to have overall, which gives Jesmon a lot more to work with in terms of using alliance. Because if you're playing an older version of the strategy, or a strategy that focuses on just clearing the deck or clearing out your opponent, if you have something like a security attack plus 1 Greymon in this stack, performing 3 checks immediately from a combo like this is devastating to your opponent if they don't have anything to respond with, or they're just going to have to, hope a security bomb hits you. But you're now able to clear extremely easy DP, TP wise, versus something like, just clearing a base stat, attack. So very good. I'm talking about Jesmon GX and Jesmon'X. Really quickly, before I go into like how you can look at the deck strategies, I want to talk about Jesmon'X because I think this card is absolutely insane. I think what makes this card really cool is that if you play the slow game and you bring this out, this thing's insane. If you play X Antibody, still very good, because when you get into this one, I don't necessarily think it's like extremely better than Jesmon'X from, BT10. However, I will say that this card definitely gives it a run for its money, because having Alliance innately means that once this thing comes up with another Digimon, it's going to do at least 2 checks. So the deck is already prepared to do a lot of damage. Additionally, its main benefit is its first effect for when you Digivolve. With Jesmon or X Antibody, you can make one of your Digimon unaffected by your opponent's effects and then proceed to do the attack. The reason this is important is that if you Digivolve this for whatever reason to pass the turn, and you have the Jesmon, inheritable, and it's like 1 memory, you use that effect immediately because of when Digivolving, and you proceed to attack. So it still technically gives you like a blitz effect, which is pretty cool. But more importantly, you give your Digimon that are Sistermon or Royal Knight in trait piercing, and they get to attack unsuspended Digimon. The reason this is huge is that this can still, like usually you had to use like something like Judgment of the Blade or the BT or the ST12 Savior Huckmon to do unsuspended attacks. Now we just go into this thing and it's giving everything the ability to attack unsuspended Digimon, and it gives itself the ability to attack unsuspended Digimon because it's a Royal Knight, so very cool. Additionally, for its inheritable, giving Jesmon GX piercing is cool, but also giving it the same ability to attack unsuspended Digimon just makes this card a lot better, no matter how you look at it. I really like that fact because people could argue, but I'm like, this card is insane. Like, you just read it and you're like, wow, this is cool. Talking about Jesmon GX really quick, I think what makes this card very good is that I don't think it'll be super expensive unless a lot of people want to play Jesmon this format. So I do think that you will be able to pick up a copy or 2 of this for Jesmon decks. I do still like the fact that it carries a lot of the, consistency of the last one, where it still has the ability to play, you still place a Royal Knight underneath it, so that's still something you do. You delete something with as much or less DP as this Digimon, so pretty much you're clearing out every Digimon that's like lower than it, and that's really going to be hard to have something bigger than this, because at 16 DP, 16,000, sorry, and with all the inheritables it now has access to, getting over this thing in terms of DP to not be deleted by that effect is almost impossible. Additionally, for its one attacking effect, being able to unsuspend this, and then you proceed to count how many Royal Knights you have underneath it, and for every 2, you're able to like just strip security off your opponent. I think that a lot of people are going to understand how good that effect really is, because of how many Royal Knights you can physically get underneath it, technically, if you're going through the different builds of Jesmon. So the standard version can get bare minimum 2 already from like Jesmon and then the X, and then on to Jesmon GX. However, if you're playing like the Royal Knight version, you can actually stack a ton of Digimon together if you're playing more of the Genkumon line, because if you play some numbers of Jesmon, the Jesmon'X, then Genkumon and Genkumon'X, you can at least get 4 underneath this thing if you do the X evolutions, and then proceed to DNA into this, where it can at least strip 2 security bare minimum and probably win the game because it'll unsuspend. And with everything else here, we have a lot of power to talk about. Now we're going to talk about the deck strategies, as there are various amounts, and I'm going to talk about them really quick so that you get a better understanding of how Jesmon actually is a good deck, and possibly its support breaks back to the metagame. So starting off, we have the one I call GX Turbo. Now this one was actually inspired and featured more prevalently on something on East's channel. So if you haven't seen his metagame breakdown for the first week of the BT20 format, I heavily implore you guys go check that out, because in the final video or part of the video, that is where this deck kind of is very similar to, as Jesmon, or GX Turbo I'm calling it, is designed around the ability to get as quickly and as fast as possible to getting into Jesmon GX, but also getting into the combo as quickly as possible to do damage, because you're basically wanting to climb into Jesmon GX with the full support of the brand new the brand new support of BT20, where obviously your main line at the bottom and Sistermons focus around searching and drawing cards as quickly as possible. We see this with the BT6 Huckmon as basically your main rookie, but behind some of the others. You also play cards like the ST12 Sistermon Blanc, because you want to draw cards to filter as quickly as possible, from Master to Disciple at 4, because you really want to find your pieces quickly. And then it partners very well with the BT20 support, which is your main Digimon here. I do think that with this specific support, the whole Genkumon combo has not been showcased here. We'll showcase it in something else, but the combo is extremely cool, and I will showcase it because it actually works extremely well. You can get two level 6s online relatively quickly with the BT20 support, and it's pretty insane if I had to be honest. But the key factor here is that the Genkumon from BT20 is definitely now a part of the Jesmon deck. It is not just an inclusion, so I did want to make that clear to everybody else who may be watching. This card is definitely a part of the strategy now through and through. Before, it didn't really feel like it, but now it is solidified into the strategy, so you can play it if you want. But like I said, BT20 Jesmon is actually a lot better than people probably give it credit for. The more I read it, the more I understand with the new support what you're supposed to do, and with old support it still works. Obviously, when you get into Jesmon GX, if you can get into this card with the full Genkumon and Jesmon line set up, you can do 2 security popped off from its attacking effect and then suspend, so you can pretty much win the game with just this one card if you have the setup. So very good. Talking about another version that I think is more commonly associated with people, as we have Jesmon Control. So Jesmon Control is a version that I've only seen a few times, but I do understand what people want to do with this deck. Now, Jesmon Control is interesting because it focuses on making sure that cards like the ST12 Savior Huckmon and other cards associated in the line are now able to just kind of clear your opponent's field. You really want to focus on that being able to attack unsuspended Digimon of your opponent, so that you can clear off their threats, so that the deck basically is able to slowly climb up and amass a resource wall of like Sistermons and a good Jesmon, and then you just finish by attacking your opponent all at once. So I do think that's a really cool strategy I've seen before, and it does give people a chance to try something a bit different. Jesmon Control is more focused on making sure you keep tempo going, so you kind of keep the tempo up, so you have these big explosive plays when you need to, but simultaneously you're just clearing off your opponent's board so that they can't do anything against you. It focuses more on cards like the ST12 Jesmon, because this one has Blitz, but combined with Savior Huckmon's effect and being able to digivolve into other cards, you're primarily trying to get this thing to kind of clear off your opponent's Digimon. Additionally, using options as well, like Judgment of the Blade as another option that you can use to give the ability to attack unsuspended Digimon is cool. You do play BT20 Jesmon here because of its ability to give you additionally a token that's a blocker, because it allows you to amass more of a field. So yes, you can use the additional effects of like Alliance in this line from like the BT20 support, but you don't necessarily need it as you're slowly climbing your way up into building a bigger field. Additionally, Jesmon'S is like the boss, or the brand new one, or the BT20 one is the boss of this strategy, where primarily what you're trying to do is just get into this when you're ready and then swing to do lots of damage and try to clear the game as quickly as possible. This also includes something like the BT6 Savior Huckmon, which will be focused on the final one, because that's what we're talking about with the final deck, which is also my more budget-friendly version of the deck for people who maybe want to try out Jesmon, and that is going to be Jesmon OTK. This one hasn't changed very much since BT6, so if you're watching this video and you are a player and you have not played since post BT6, like around that time, and you remember this deck, this is for you, because luckily enough, this deck is pretty much still the same, thanks to the return of Savior Huckmon from the ban list. So talking about it really quick, this one focuses primarily exactly the same as it did before. You want to make sure that you play BT6 Huckmon because it searches the most pieces. You want to play something like the ST1 Greymon, because security attack +1 in this deck is very important for trying to close out the game. Additionally, the BT6 Savior Huckmon is here because it's returned from the ban list. You can now continuously use it. You also have of fantastic Digimon you can now use with this card, because before it was only a 1, so you really couldn't pair it up as well. But you have cards like the BT10 Sister Sealmon, or sorry, Sistermon Seal, which can allow you to Digivolve for a cost reduce, technically, of other Digimon, but also allow you to kind of get to that other realm instead of having to rely specifically on other Digimon to get you there. This card can allow you to get there all the way. You can unsuspend, obviously, for its one attacking effect, so it's just very insane. But talking about the level 6s here, additionally, cards like the ST12 Jesmon is your main boss of this deck now, because you're now able to simply go into this and blitz, because that's kind of the key factor now of the deck, is you want to take advantage of blitzing against your opponent, because now you can cost reduce Evo, but additionally you can use this blitz mechanic, get more Sistermons to the field. You can even climb all the way up to Jesmon'S if you have many of the Sistermon Seals from BT10, but additionally you still can line up your Sistermon Blancs, you can line up your Sistermons of, you know, normal conditions of Sistermon Seal to gain memory back, and I think extra DP, so you can do that as well. But the point is, this is the main boss of the deck. It is very cheap, so this deck is very affordable. Additionally, cards like the BT13 Jesmon, personally, I don't think you play many copies of it, but the main reason you'd play it in something like this is as removal, because I do think this deck just wants to make sure it has the ability to remove Digimon threats away from you, making sure you can perform your OTK, so you still have access to that, but pretty much Jesmon OTK still exists in this form. It's very budget friendly. And then finally, your pseudo boss here to finish the game is obviously going to be Blitz Omni, because after you do, if you can perform the full combo with Jesmon from BT12, you'll have performed effectively, I think, 5 checks. I think it's 5 checks on its own, because you'll have security, it'll have security attack +1 from Greymon, security attack +1 from its own effect, and a lot of DP. Point is, you'll do 3 checks, unsuspend, do 3 more checks. You'll be suspended, obviously, but you've wiped out all security, and then you go Blitz Omni and win the game. Point is, this deck is still very much the same as it's been since its inception, and it gets just more consistent and better. So I did leave it here. But ultimately, guys, that's where I'm going to close off the video. The point of this video was to show how good Jesmon is, and kind of showing how much the BT 2.5 or 20 support is actually going to be. I think if you're sleeping on this strategy, not thinking it'll be able to fight back, I highly hope that you watch this video and see what you think. I do think that this deck has a massive chance to return to the metagame pretty well, as I do think this is one of the sleeper strategies sitting in BT20, as I do think as the format unfolds and people continue to build with this strategy, this deck will just get better, as I do think it slices through a lot of the metagame like hot butter. But that's all I've got for you guys today. This has been Brad from the Ed Army signing off, and for all of you out there, to sign on.